Dat is het.
Heißt es auch weiterhin allen applaudieren, die bis ins Ziel zur dritten Etappe geschafft haben. Also deswegen auch weiterhin fleißig hier bleiben. In Kürze, da gibt's
kant van de weg staat. En volgens mij is het nog in koers. Dus misschien zien we op het eind.
Zeker denk ik zo weer Karsten als je net op de tijd verbleven hebt. Misschien dat het daar ook niet fantastisch was.
Perform straight away. It all depends on what kind of attitude, if you're living on the top of a mountain or whether you are doing a hypoxic chamber and you effectively at a hotel at sea level or an altitude. Team, and it's not going to be the first time he's been on altitude.
Yeah, pretty different approaches to it, aren't there? There's the sleep high, train low, sleep low, train high, which is less popular than the sleep high, train high, which again takes quite a long time to adapt to. Difficult to do the training, but yeah, it's a detailed science these days. And then, as you say, there are those people who will live in a hypoxic chamber, never go to altitude at all, but simulate the effects. Breakaway group looks as if it's starting to fracture a little bit. Still hanging on to that minute and a bit advantage, but some riders proving to be slightly fresher and maybe just slightly stronger than others, or is this just a case of slight lack of cooperation between riders? They must be feeling the fatigue. It's been a long time out there for several of these riders.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, they still have some way to go. They would have felt what they were like going over the Mudehoy last time around, and with that, am I going to pass the next couple of climbs if they continue at this pace? And then with that, trying to save something as we're heading towards the Côte d'Aref.
So Thibaut Nice got the jacket off. A little bit of assistance there from Patrick Conrad, who's been top 10 in this race on a couple of occasions, so he knows it well. The Lidl Trek squad will escort their man back up close to the front. Try and stay in position for the next round of action. The next appointment, the next big hill that they have to face is the RF once more, Côte d'Aref. And we'll hit the lower slopes of the Côte d'Aref with about 4.5 kilometers from now. So yeah, they really do come thick and fast, don't they, in the second half of this race? Not too many opportunities to recover, distribute clothing.
Thibaut Nice just getting a change of kit.
I mean, there was a time you'd put one jacket in the car and you go and collect that, and that's all you had. But these days, riders have the opportunity to get so many different jackets. Yeah.
There are so many different types of jackets and thickness, long sleeve, short sleeve, and so on and so on. Yeah, and I guess having the right one on is part of the performance today.
And the jackets are so much more aerodynamic, which makes them efficient when they're on, but then they're tougher to get on and then to get off again afterwards.
Yeah, they are, that's for sure.
So everything is a compromise. Everything has its advantages and disadvantages. Martin Schmidt making a great name for himself today. He's looked teak tough, really strong rider. Two Norwegians from the UNO X squad also looking good. Arriving in the freshest, of course, but of course they had to make a big effort to get across the gap. As indeed this man, just looking over his shoulder, Tobias Foss. What a great World Time Trial Championship a few years ago. Looked like he was going to step on to great things. is a sort of consistent performer, but still looking for his first victory of the season.
Yeah, but had a pretty solid Paris-Nice, I would have to say.
Ninth overall. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it was clearly going really good at that point. Then the last number of races has not been anywhere near as good as probably hoped for. But yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean that his legs are not there today.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the season holds from after this. I don't think he's part of the Giro d'Italia plans for the Ineos Grenadier squad. Not far from the RF at the moment. The pace of the riders as we go inside 60 kilometers remaining. Let's try and get an idea gauge on these speeds. They're probably in around the middle schedule. Yeah, between the slowest and the middle one. Average speed of about 42 kilometers an hour today. Breakaway group maintaining cooperation. Rob Stannard from the Bahrain Victoria squad, the Australian rider, on the front of the breakaway group that has worked hard to try and maintain its lead all day. And Stannard from the Bahrain Victoria squad with Foss from Ineos Grenadiers. First riders to leap across the divide up into the breakaway group, which then numbered 5. That made it up to 7. Lost a couple, gained a couple more. Been all action on the front of Flèche Wallonne all day. It's been all action. Well, I won't say all action at the peloton behind, but certainly the pace has been challenging, and we've seen some really strong riders suffering out there.
Yeah, it's been. I would say that the intensity has been on all day and increased. So, or certainly the feeling has been that way, with the weather conditions being what they are as well. So they've been riding hard, and every corner you go through, you have to accelerate a little bit harder out of it because the speed through the corner is that bit lower, and that tends to wear on you as well. So again, I think the positioning on a day like today, where it is wet, is even more crucial than what it normally would be. And when you look at the likes of Remco Evenepoel and Tadej Pogacar, they're sitting up there in the top, 20 pretty much the whole day, protected by their teammates, obviously. And for me, that's the way to ride these races, because you don't have that rubber band effect out of every corner, the hard acceleration to deal with.
Tobias Foss is up in the break, by the way. He won a great stage of Tour of the Alps last year, and it's coming to mind that the weather conditions weren't dissimilar. It was cold and a bit miserable, and it was a long, hard grind of a day, and he managed to just, it's the kind of conditions that might have informed his thinking in racing across to the break.
Yeah, maybe. But I also think, they got 1 minute and 15 seconds here. And I'm not entirely sure that, that is, I don't think, going to be enough by the time they really start racing in the peloton. So the question is, have they got anything else to give out in the breakaway here now? Can they increase the pace somewhat to build on that time gap? Or, I think when you're looking at UNOX and Ineos Grenadiers, surely there must be a background thought with the idea of placing 2 riders in the breakaway, and is that they have got someone or one of their sort of favorites, one of their leaders in the team, looking at an early attack to try and get across to this breakaway group, and with that they have 2 teammates in that break, and they can then go all in. But it's also very, very, very difficult to do on a circuit like this, where you have effectively 16 kilometers from the top of the Mur de Huy until we hit this point of the race, the Côte d'Aref, and that's really the only time where you would have help of 2 teammates who've been sitting out there, spending energy, probably won't have the same freshness as what you do if you're trying to going across to them. So it's limited amount of time to ride.
They don't have big name riders, so they've got to attack the race if they want to get something out of it. I mean, they do have Axel Laurence, who's was 18th in this race last year, but he comes to the team, French rider with a sort of a burgeoning, developing reputation. He's an exciting young talent, but we don't necessarily think of him as being a rider that can challenge the likes of Pogacar and friends today.
No, but then again, sometimes you have to play that card and to give that young developing rider the opportunity to perform and see where he's at, and maybe you'd be surprised.
And so therefore try and play, try and make the race earlier just to see can you shake it up and be there when they arrive. Out of the saddle, second time of asking on the RF. 2.1 kilometers, just to remind you, just over 5% on average. Who's feeling good? Who's a little challenged? Down the back of the peloton, Jacopo Mosca has done excellent work for the Lidl Trek squad, so he's just cruising along.
Yeah, I don't know if he was taking a jacket back to the team car or if he was actually done with his work for the day. It didn't look like he was.
No, he looked like he had the legs. Yeah. Maybe not the case for Simon Guglielmi, but superb job done by the Arkea B&B Hotels rider to be in the break today. And he's got his teammate, Kevin Vauquelin, who's surely a rider we haven't spoken about, but he's got to be an A-list favourite for today. Vauquelin, 5 wins in 2025, second in this race last year, 9th in Amstel Gold. Kevin Vauquelin from the Arkea B&B Hotels is absolutely one to watch out for today. Knows the race, he's in good form, he's having a great season. And the French certainly have potential option for glory today. Most recent French winner, of course, was Julian Alaphilippe, who too will hope to relive old glories. French haven't taken 11 wins in this event in the past. Naturally enough, as you would expect, the host nation Belgium, the most successful nation in the history of Flèche Wallonne, with 39 wins, most recent of which was a victory for Dylan Teuns in 2022. And this is a really solid piece of work being done by Louis Vervaeke, the 31-year-old Belgian on the front for the Soudal Quick-Step squad. And it's down to...
I'm quite impressed with the young Ineos Grenadiers rider here, Artem Schmidt, as well. First year at this level, he rose as stagiaire last year, but he's looking really, really good here. In the breakaway, obviously, but he's been out there for a long time and he's still setting a strong pace and
still full of beans. Yeah, just 21 years of age. And Vervaeke starting to lift the tempo, and so that can only mean that these riders are coming back, and we will presumably see a little bit of a fight between these riders. Things will crumble amongst them. Dylan Teuns. This doesn't look good for him, really, does it?
No.
22 champion. Sometimes it'll get you like that, and the weather can play a role in. Legs just will not respond. Inside 55 to go. And another climb is behind them. Cruise down to Sharav. They've a little way to go to reach it. Got what, about 10k for the leaders up front to the start of the Côte de Sharav. Mind you, not too much daylight between the leaders and those teams behind. The main peloton behind. A lot of teams we've mentioned, they're likely go-to man is Leonard van Eetveld. It's a race he's target. Arjen Levens has been strong through the Classics campaign, but maybe the Flanders cobbles more to his favour and liking. Sepulveda now 33 years of age, might have had the physical characteristics in days of yore. Van Eetveld very much the favourite, 23-year-old Belgian. So 2 clubs to come on this penultimate tour of 37 kilometres. So we make our way towards the next climb in the next 9 kilometres. And the breakaway group, reduced advantage for them. And a few little cracks developing in that break up front. And I don't think we're going to have the fastest edition of this race. It's going to go back to 2004 for the fastest edition of Flèche Wallonne, 44 kilometres an hour. We're probably something in the order of about 42 kilometres an hour at this point. I mean, the intensity of the race is actually set to ramp up if it possibly could between now and the end, but it's a hilly old parkour. Over 3,000 metres of climbing, 3,060 metres of uphill riding throughout the day. 11 climbs in total, 9 of which come inside the final 100 kilometres of this bike race. It's an impressive display by Vavaco's Remco Evenepoel, staying very close to the front, indeed, just 1 off the front. Ever vigilant. But potentially, he can use a little bit of extra energy.
Yeah, always. When you're sitting that close to the front, you tend to use a bit more energy. Further back into the peloton, obviously, a better place from that perspective. But obviously, there's added risk into sitting there. But you always tend to want to have a good 7-8 riders in front of you. Then you tend to have a better slipstream to sit in.
Remco Evenepoel was a stunning display, wasn't it, on Sunday in Amstel Gold, coming on the back of Brabantse pijl in that sprinting to the sheer, I mean, just disbelief, I think, of the watching public, the way he outsprinted Wout van Aert to take victory in Brabantse pijl on Friday, but then led out the sprint in Amstel Gold on Sunday and ultimately finished third. So, was that a case of one that went a begging that he could actually have got the win on the day?
It's could have, would have, should have. It's always.
He did talk about the headwind afterwards. There was a bit of a headwind. He let out and maybe just.
Yeah. I mean, I think he possibly started the sprints a fraction too early, but then again, you're better off, I think, to take on the sprint and to be able to deliver your sprints properly than waiting and getting jumped and then finding yourself on the back foot. So personally, I quite like the way he did things there. Clearly shows that he's got confidence in his ability as well.
Yeah, brimful of confidence. That's never really been an issue for Remco Evenepoel. Never, certainly in public. No, confident guy. He's an absolutely fascinating character and commands every situation that he's in. He is the centre of attention and he is the man who's running the show. Well, Foss and Friends down to 3/4 of a minute advantage. Not much longer. Heading towards the Côte de Charav, the second of the climbs on this second loop around the finishing circuit here in Flèche Wallonne. Well, that'll be followed by the second time up the Mordouille, and then they'll do it all again with 37 kilometres remaining. You're watching La Flèche Wallonne, the second of our triptych of races in what they call the Wallonne Classics, the Ardennes region of Belgium. And ouch. They can hurt a little bit. The speed bumps, tough for the cyclists. They're definitely tough for the camera moto supporting and giving us these excellent pictures.
I think on the bike it's not actually that bad as long as you see it. Obviously, you tend to jump up onto that little sleeper, and then you sort of float off it. On the motorbike, I think it's far worse. I feel for the cameraman.
Yeah, they're definitely earning their corn today, to say the least. Wonderful support here from the moto crew, and increasingly, of course, we're seeing speed bumps in finales. We talk about road furniture. It's certainly a feature of Amstel Gold last Sunday. Less so maybe in Belgium compared to the Netherlands, and certainly in the Walloon region. But still, we see more and more speed bumps, and they are sometimes in inopportune moments, and it can be an extra challenge for race organisers to find precisely the right design, the right finale that won't, you won't have speed bumps in the finishing sprint or at a difficult moment on a bend or whatever.
Yeah, it is a constant issue. All the traffic furniture that is placed on our roads, certainly from a bike racing perspective. It's the added dangers all the time, and on this particular road that we're on here now, there is a section where you got this long stretch of around the bend, which has got bollards in the middle, and I think it's raised up. It certainly was when I was here a year ago. It's a raised up section as well, and it's very difficult to see when you're sitting in, certainly in the peloton. Smaller group, not such a big problem, but in the peloton, it's very difficult to see, and it's so dangerous for the riders.
These riders must be absolutely exhausted at this moment. The problem for them is that they've still got almost 50 kilometres of racing. We're coming into what would ordinarily and traditionally be described as the final Flèche Wallonne. Traditionally is a long, slow burn to a crescendo conclusion on Mur de Huy. But will we see something slightly different this year? Are we going to see a little bit more entertainment and activity on the Mur de Huy at the penultimate time of asking? And then, of course, you've got the two climbs on that finishing circuit inside the final 37 kilometres before we arrive on to the final assault on Mur de Huy. Are we going to see potential ambushes from some of the other teams that mightn't have the big A-list favourites, but nonetheless have some big-name riders? We've been talking a little bit about it earlier about what Ineos Grenadiers might do, or the likes of EF Education Easy Post with multiple numbers and very strong riders. Similarly, Team Jaco Alula, we're fascinated to see how they're going to handle things today with Ben O'Connor, Michael Matthews, Mauro Schmidt, Alan Hatherley and others. A really strong, deep lineup of riders. The Movistar squad as well have some really strong riders in their lineup, not least, of course, Enric Mas, a rider who knows the race, finished 17th last year. I wonder how the 30-year-old Spaniard fancies his chances today.
Henrik, ¿cómo está después de ver Zulia? ¿Para usted?
La verdad es que bien. He tenido unos días cansado en casa.
Henrik, how are you after the tour of the Basque Country? Well, to be honest, I'm doing fine. I had a few days tired at home, like everyone, found back the good feeling. And now I'm ready for today.
¿Cuál es la Flèche Wallonne para usted?
What is the Flèche Wallonne for you? Is it a preparation race for Liège or a real goal? No, it's a special goal of the season. We already won it 5 times with the team, and with our lineup, we hope we can repeat that in this Flèche. Are we going to have a different type of race today? Yeah, it could be yes. After what happened in the Amstel, we could also have a different race here today. Thank you. And thank you indeed to Enric Mas, who believes, interestingly enough, not just the parkour and how it's been designed over the last couple of years, but also the events of last Sunday may well change the character of how this race is played.
Yeah, I mean, we're still waiting for that first attack to come. 46 kilometers to go. I do believe that there are some teams in here who need to try and create another breakaway, a strong group of riders that go clear. But it's also, with this particular bike race, if you're seen before 150 meters to the bike to the finish line, chances are that very, very big that you are not going to have anything to say about, let's call it even the podium. So you really, to sit and wait, you have to be very, very confident in your ability. If you attack, you also know for a fact that you are throwing away your opportunity to maybe ride a top position, and let's call it top 5, top 10. So whatever you decide here now is a question of two halves. Do I sacrifice my chance of maybe doing an okay result by just waiting and going up the climb one time full gas, or do I take the risk of winning the bike race because I know I'm not going to beat a Tadej Pogacar and Remco Evenepoel and the rest that we're talking about as pure favourites for this particular finish. So, and it's quite difficult to make that call, and that's why I think going to a race like this, you need to go here with a couple of very, very strong cards to play. One or two that you're happy to sacrifice. One that you keep in stored on ice until 150 meters to the finish line, and you have enough riders to deliver that particular one card into the bottom of the Mur de Huy, and then see what they can do. So it's tactically a very difficult race to do unless you are the pure favorite. If you are the pure favorite, do what Soudal Quickstep and UAE are doing, right on the front, keep the group together, keep everything under control, deliver the favorite into the bottom, into the steep section of the Mur de Huy the final time, and then let them do what they do. So yeah, and I think
it's simple when you're stronger. Yeah,
it's simple. It's very, very simple if you have that favorite. But if you don't, if you're like slightly off the top favorites, it's a very tactically difficult race to do. Are you happy? Are you racing for a top 10? Are you happy with that? Or are you racing for the win? At which point we know we're not going to beat a Pogacar up this time. So do we have to go on the attack? But with that, we're throwing away all our chances of a decent result.
Decent result not in prospect at this point for Rob Stannard. He's starting to wilt a little bit and drop away, and indeed you would fear for the potential of any of these breakaway riders still being on the front by the time they get across the Sharav. Still with some distance to the finish line, and riders from the Tudor Pro Cycling Squad and others starting to go south as the sheer accumulation of fatigue and kilometres. I don't think there's necessarily any great extra impetus on the front of the peloton. It's just has been virtually no let off today, and each and every one of these riders, of course, has been challenged. And as the road starts to rise, well, there's no place to hide anymore.
No. The time gap is coming down very, very quickly as well.
Yeah. And they're coming back. That seems inevitable. As young Artem Schmidt, after his great hit out in the break today, also starting to drop back into the clutches of the peloton. He'd be happy enough, I think, if he got over the top, still a part of the large group, and might be able to do something for the team. But this is one of those days where every man for himself, and the conditions absolutely miserable. And I don't think, even if it is around the 10, 11 degrees, it's going to feel an awful lot colder for the riders in there, because the rain has been pelting down non-stop for ages now, pretty much throughout the day. And riders a little bit further back, including Lenny Martinez. Well, there you go. I guess it wasn't raining on the volcano, and his trip back from the Canary Islands into the misery, really, of this Walloon weather. Not proving a productive day. His teammate Rob Stannard about to be overhauled after his escapade out in the breakaway group today. Stannard, the 26-year-old Australian. And notable that many of the leading lights, including Tadej Pogacar, Remco Evenepoel and others, staying really close to the front of the peloton at the moment. Marty van Sevenet just trying to make his way up. Ben Tollett as well is in position for the Visma Lease bike squad. I haven't mentioned much about him, but I think we mentioned him in dispatches. 23-year-old Brit is one to watch today, I think, for the Visma Lease bike team. And so it'd be fascinating to see how Tish Benoot will cope with the weather. He's a pretty tough Flandrian, so you would expect that he certainly won't admit that it's difficult. Great pro with the Visma Lease bike team and looking to come up with a third top 10 in succession, and maybe even a little bit more than that for Visma Lease bike. So we're getting kind of busy on the front of the peloton there, wasn't it?
Interesting. It's basically UAE Team Emirates and Soudal Quickstep across the whole front with one or two of the Visma Lease bikes in there. But this is almost like the calm before the storm. Are they waiting? Are they going to move on the Mudehoy this time? You know, could UAE Team Emirates and Soudal Quickstep effectively go together and set such a strong pace that they create that 15 to 20 rider front group who can follow?
And if they have multiple options, yeah.
Or is Tadej Pogacar gonna set the record straight and go the penultimate time on the Mu and not see him again?
The longest solo break I found was a long time ago, and I don't think we're going to see. The inside 42 to go, and the gap down to 20 seconds. I wonder will they get a little bit of leeway now, but it looks inevitable that they're coming back any moment now. Yes, I did see a long solo break, but I'm not sure if I have the notes here of 80 kilometers, but it was ages and ages ago. I don't think we're going to see anything like that. And just how chastened will Tadej Pogacar have been by the fact that, you know, his, 47 and a bit kilometer break escapade, 47 to go, wasn't it, with Julian Alaphilippe. That was just maybe a little bit too far from home, and maybe he feels I better leave this one a little bit later today.
I don't think he would have left any kind of dent in his confidence that he could do a solo win here. But at the same time, I think he's...
I'm write it down from the Waalse job and the squad, and it gives you a sense. The Wagner Bazin WB team, I should say. Quickly down and quickly up. Oh, difficult to make that second adjustment. You got to turn in once and do it smoothly, not too aggressively. He was in the break all day, must be pretty fatigued. Cyril Desal.
Unfortunately, took the rear mech off that bike as well, so he'll need a bike change. Oh, here we go.
Not the only one down, and riders from the UAE,
crash.
and that happened at the front of the bunch because there's plenty of representation from the teams that we saw up towards the front. A couple of Lidl Trek riders. That Scale Moser.
I think it is.
Well, looking very, very pained indeed, and a couple of Lidl Trek squad riders to assist. That could have been Brandon McNulty that's also feeling the pinch here a little bit, and Soudal Quickstep. So big teams present near the front. Julian Bernard and
it's gone down hard.
Well, he looks a little bit anxious about this one, and that one hurt. And the man who won Amstel Gold just a couple of days ago, it's less his knee, I think, and more his shoulder, and he's really feeling this one. So plenty of anxious conference going on there amongst the Lidl Trek riders. Let's get a look at this one again, Magnus.
He's the first one to go in there as well. Oh. This just goes to show how difficult it is to ride in these conditions. On you know, I know the teams would have pumped up the tires to wet weather pressure, but he's clearly hit his elbow quite hard as Gelmoser. So.
Well, he's got to get back on his bike, but the gap has got to be fairly significant at this moment. Not exactly an ideal scenario because the Yeah, the pressure was on the peloton, not full-on racing, but certainly they were going pretty hard, to say the least. It's going to be challenging for Schiel Moos, I think, even to get. I really fear for his long-term prospects in this bike race at this point.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to get much further than maybe the bus.
Disappointment for the Amstel Gold victor, man, coming in with absolutely stunning form. We can only hope that he recovers in time for Liège-Bastogne-Liège, but it doesn't look like it's going to be today for Matthias Schiel Moos.
No.
Flying Dane, who could hardly believe that he'd taken the victory last Sunday. It's absolutely massive day out for him, and massive disappointment coming so quickly afterwards. Otto Vergarde has a little look across, and now all hopes for the Lidl Trek squad pinned on Thibaut Nace as the teams and riders spread wide across the road to try and get command.
Well, I think Thibaut lost most of his teammates there. Actually, when you're looking at the number of riders around Schiel Moos, I think Thibaut, lost the majority of his team.
And that's going to be problematic and challenging for Thibaut Nace. It's all going a little bit pear-shaped at the moment for the Lidl Trek squad. Meanwhile, we're down to 3 riders up front as the all the Norwegians indeed, isn't it? Diversnes and Bleknesson from the UNO X squad and Tobias Foss have managed to prevail. Others wilting and going backwards, but you feel as if these 3 riders as well are going to be overhauled on our second climb up Mur de Huy. Crowd has swelled in size, plenty of brollies out, plenty of slightly damp and bedraggled looking fans. Let's get a look at this from the front again, because it was pretty close to the front that Schiel Moos went down and other riders reacting behind. There's little you can do. You're so on the limit there.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do at that point. I guess the only way that you tend to ride when you have these wet conditions is that you try to line up your apex to be basically undercutting the rider in front of you on the exit. So if they slide away from you, and your trajectory, your apex is different. So you go slower into the corner and then accelerate out of it, but you're on a tighter apex than the rider in front of you. In that way, if they slide away from you, and you don't have to touch the brakes. But it requires quite a special mind to not
take
pull
a
the
different
brakes.
line. Yeah.
Well, to number 1, take a different line. To number 2, not pull the brakes when you see the rider crashing, like literally in front of you. And to just believe that your tires will hold and you'll go through the corner anyway. So that's the only thing you can do at that point. Otherwise, you are a passenger.
Even physically tensing on the bike can have an effect on the
it does
smooth passage.
So.
Yeah.
And I guess coming into the final, the next time around on this one, the positioning coming out of that turn is going to be pretty important. It's not crucial, but it's pretty important that you're there. So maybe this time around, the final time, they might take it a little bit easier, which also means that he punches up, and then the elastic effect is far greater when you come out onto the straight. So again, the positioning going into that corner, even more crucial.
And then, of course, everyone knows about it, and everyone's just maybe potentially a little bit more nervous about it. And everybody wants to be in prime position ahead of everyone else, and it can add to the tension. There's plenty of tension on the climb here as they make their way up through the penultimate look at the Mur de Huy. Next time, it's for paying prizes, and Tadej Pogacar looks very, very comfortable, as indeed does Remco Evenepoel, serene at the front of the field. And in command of the peloton, wearyingly winding its way to the top of the Mur de Huy. But still, our breakaway riders might just, well, looks if they are going to make it to the top, but still in front of the race. Well, that in itself is a pretty impressive act. Well, a few slightly wet-looking Basque flags being shown here. And as you get a sense, just that final little ramp inside 100 meters from the line, just asking that extra question of the riders, and that can be, you know, the difference between victory and finishing third, fourth, fifth, or worse. You know, the differences can be massive in that final couple of 100 meters.
Well, where the road levels out, if you have the legs left to make the acceleration there, you can make a big difference. That's we got the first bit of movement coming from the peloton then.
So now it is the Visma Lease Bike squad that want to try and shake things up a little bit and make it as challenging as possible for the rest, and just see can they stretch it out. Some of the big names starting to make an appearance at the front as well. Ben Healy among them, also starting to move up, and the riders up front will hear the bell, and they'll also hear the extra frisson of excitement, the extra noise of that baying pack about to overhaul them. Well, these riders are still in the main peloton, but they're crossing the line some way adrift of riders at the front, and this is where it becomes, well, it's so important to stay up front, because constantly you're trying to recover a position and use energy to do it.
Yeah, and that crash will have had an effect on the peloton as well. There would have been riders having to chase to get back into the peloton before they hit the climb, and some riders may not have even have gotten there. So the peloton, obviously the pace is higher, but the peloton being more strung out as you hit the bottom of the climb, which means you have to go harder.
If you're up front, it's because you're stronger. If you're stronger, you're saving energy. It seems so unfair, but it's the essence of it, isn't it? And the rich get richer, I suppose, in terms of physical ability. Time for...
There's a team that we haven't really mentioned an awful lot as well there, Declan. It's Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe. I'm just spotting Danny Martinez sitting really close to the front here on the climb, looking quite comfortable.
Yeah, knows the race. He was fifth in 2022. Danny Martinez, one of numerous Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe riders in there. One more lap. 3 more climbs. This is going to be a really, really tough day out for the riders, if it isn't already, for so many of them in there. Some will be cold, some will be tired, some will be cold and tired. Others dancing on the pedals. Mark Hirschi halfway down the line there, former winner of this race, of course, back in 2020. Difficult day out in Amstel Gold last Sunday. Wonder what the Swiss rider can achieve for the Tudor Pro Cycling team. Will it be he, or will it be Julian Alaphilippe? Hirschi started the season well. And are we going to see any attacks launched now with just 15 seconds? Is there anyone in that peloton, as is currently comprised, that is maybe thinking that it might be worth venturing forward, trying to force the hand of the other teams? Is this the time to try and think about doing it? The Soudal Quick-Step squad, Van Sevenent, still have come out of the front of the peloton, but all the other teams starting to swarm around them. Magnus Sheffield made it back in after his long and slow wheel change some time ago. Brandon McNulty's just he's got the rain jacket off and just trying to get himself sorted. Number 15 for the UAE Team Emirates squad. It's 11th at Amstel Gold. He will certainly be an important ally to Tadej Pogacar into the final moments of this race.
One thing we haven't seen an awful lot of on the screen, which may be a good thing, is Timchenko Alula. They've been very noticeable by their absence. Sitting a little bit further down the back here, but with a large number of riders still.
Keeping their powder dry, if that could conceivably be possible in this weather.
That might be difficult in these conditions.
Yeah. Something of a damp squib to continue the armaments thing. And quite the show of strength by Soudal. Oh, they said they were going to do it, and they're doing it. They're literally trying to ride the finish out of the legs of Thibaut Nace and others. Presumably, Tadej Pogacar among them.
Yeah, I would have expected the climbs to have been done at a higher pace for that particular reason. But then again, we still have two more significant climbs before the finish. And maybe this is where the pace will be set that strong that it might challenge a Thibaut and the other sort of more explosive riders.
Yeah, Thibaut, just to make the point, is currently sitting in the wheels, happy enough to be halfway down the bunch, maybe, well, a bit more than halfway down the bunch at the moment. That bunch is thinned out a little bit. It's is it even 100 riders at this point? Quite a bit less, I suspect. Reducing in size, the group of riders. Well, the Norwegian combine at the front of the bike race in Flèche Wallonne has extended a few seconds of its advantage, still pushing hard to try and stay in control as we race into this final 37-kilometre lap of Flèche Wallonne 2025. 3 climbs still in prospect for the riders. Next one that they have to think about is our third and final climb up the Côte d'Aref. And we'll reach that in about 13 kilometres time. So we have a little bit of time to think about this, and a little bit of an opportunity perhaps for 2 riders from the Uno X Mobility Squad and our Ineos Grenadiers representative. Diversnes Leknesund and Foss respectively, doing a solid job on behalf of their teams, but the squads behind. And yeah, as you mentioned, Thibaut shorn of teammates. Is this a race that you can win without teammates?
I believe so. If you're good at surfing the wheels and positioning yourself, then I think you don't necessarily need anyone to set the pace on the final climb. You just have to follow the riders that are setting the pace. I guess getting into the bottom of the climb is the one area where you may need someone, but like I said, if you're good at surfing the wheels, you can position yourself using other teams, then I think you can actually do this. The only time that it would be a negative thing would be if there's a group that goes up the road here now and you are not in it, then you haven't got anyone to basically close a gap to a small breakaway down. And that's where obviously the negative side of not having a teammate will be shown.
Alex Adam Bodo a little bit further back, and might be advised Tish Pinot as well. The Visma Lisa bike, a couple of top 10s in this race in the last couple of years. Except before, he's just stunningly consistent in this event. And Tom Pidcock as well. A little bit of urgency about the body language of the Yorkshireman as he looks to improve on his best finish, which, if memory serves, 6th place in 2021. One rider I haven't mentioned all day, actually, is one of the surprise packages. One of the most impressive riders in Amstel Gold last Sunday was Louis Bardet, the Frenchman with the Intermarché Wanty squad. He was 6th and involved in lots and lots of the counter-attacking late on. They kind of missed the boat in terms of getting on board with the group, including Pogacar, Remco Evenepoel, and of course Skelmusa. And if you're just tuning in, Matthias Skelmusa has been involved in an accident. He got back on his bike, but the signals weren't good, and we haven't heard any news just yet. But I don't think that Matthias Skelmusa was going to be able to get back into the race, and we can only hope that he's going to be able to recover to strut his stuff and use his great form in Liège-Bastogne-Liège next weekend. Yeah,
I guess this particular race is very, very different to an Amstel Gold and certainly to Liège-Bastogne-Liège. It's so much focus on that one effort on the final time up the Mur de Huy. So I think that the riders that we're sort of looking at are potentially somewhat different to certainly what we would have had on Sunday, and potentially what the riders with an opportunity going into Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
Continued control for the Soudal Quick-Step squad as we approach 30 kilometres to go in Flèche Wallonne 2025. It has been, as expected, a day of attrition, with the weather conditions proving almost, if not quite as challenging as 12 months ago. More rain for the riders to deal with. We've had a breakaway group of initially 5 that swelled in size ultimately to 8, and then is reduced down now to 3 of the riders who came across from the main peloton late and are determined to stay out front for as long as possible. 2 riders, all 3 Norwegian, 2 riders from the Uno X Mobility squad, Frederick de Versnes and Andreas Leknesund. They are currently sandwiching the Ineos Grenadiers rider Tobias Foss, whose time out front looks as if it's very shortly going to come to an end, because this has been just a pretty much relentless pace set by the Soudal Quick Step squad.
Look at the wind here as well, though, Declan. It's certainly a bit of crosswind. The riders having to dig in pretty deep here in the wheels.
And that could be an opportunity perhaps to force something in riders that are suffering a little bit, that haven't necessarily placed themselves well. Is there an opportunity for a little bit of a split, or at the very least?
There's definitely a split happening.
Well, I would call some shenanigans. Riders further back, of whom we can include Tish Benoit, Thibaut Nace, and others, could well find themselves inconvenienced.
Further down the back as well.
Leading contenders and placing on the wrong end of the split, towards the front of the peloton. Ben Healy and Nielsen Paulus. Harry Sweeney, actually, it might be, but certainly Ben Healy on the left-hand side in the pink colours. Well, that little problem quickly solved.
I mean, it was a relatively short stretch of crosswind, but it definitely caused a little bit of havoc in the peloton there, and a few riders having to make efforts they didn't necessarily want to make. So,
it counts in large amounts at the end of the day, doesn't it?
Yeah, it can do. It just goes to show the importance of just sitting up there the whole time.
Remco Evenepoel, who was marked absent when Tadej Pogacar attacked last Sunday, ultimately, of course, was able to race across, but used a lot of energy to do so, to get to Pogacar in that final element of the race. Marked absent because he was down the back recovering from a crash, from a chase back after a spill. So that's, to give him his due on that one. It wasn't like he was just loitering and not focusing and not concentrating, but he certainly hasn't been anywhere near the back of the peloton today. One natural break that we saw, but pretty much the rest of the day, Remco Evenepoel has been within the first 4 or 5 riders. Just absolute laser focus on the victory today. Still, they refuse to resist. Fabulous effort from these breakaway riders. I think somewhat disappointingly for them, the peloton is going to be quite large in size by the time it makes its way up to them.
Yeah, they definitely will be. I would suggest they are going to get caught on the next climb, if not before, as they start to chase for position into the Côte d'Aref. They will be sort of caught.
And everyone looking around now to see where their teammates are, try and find their team leader and their protected riders and escort them through and up and close to the front. Hands up for Jan Christen. Both the Christen brothers actually are in the field today. Is Jan Christen is... Oh, is his brother here? Let me just check, clarify that. Did think I saw an earlier start list that suggested he was.
That was.
In any event, Jan Christen is a really strong emerging rider. One of 4 20-year-olds in this field today. Already a race winner in 2025. And absolutely frozen. Looks as if that's a tough moment for Thibaut Nace. Was he just sort of calling for another one, or was he just shaking his hands, shaking with the cold? I think inside 10 degrees Celsius for Thibaut Nace. Wonder how he's feeling. And this is another symptom of not having a whole lot of teammates there. You got to go back to the team car yourself. They didn't have to go back too far, and this is a relatively benign moment in the race, in as much as there's a little bit of a run to the next climb, so won't have to use too much energy to do it. But just how is T-Bone Ace feeling, I wonder, right now?
Yeah, that is the big question. It's not looking super sharp. I would say there's some sort of worrying signs, but who knows? Still have a couple of climbs to go, and then we'll find out.
Well, who knows? He knows. I suppose he knows better than anyone else. Gap out to 15 seconds again. Mara Schmidt's going down towards the back of the peloton. It's the first sight of his Swiss national champions colours. Is certainly a rider to think about here. 16th across the line last year, and then clearly in fine form after his efforts for Team Jayco Lula in Amstel Gold last Sunday. I'm talking a lot about last Sunday, naturally enough. Similar terrain, if not identical terrain, but also recent form is oh so vital. 3 riders still clear of the field. They're hanging on to it for a little while longer. 3 climbs to come. And now, with just a smidgen over 25 kilometers remaining, we head down towards the Côte d'Aref. Still got about 5k to the foot of this third from last climb of the day. Vervaeke has managed to make his way up towards the front of the peloton again. That's excellent work for the Soudal Quick-Step squad. They've got multiple representation. UAE Team Emirates as well, not lacking for teammates. For Tadej Pogacar, looking to repeat his victory of 2023. He's done the race a few times, but not. He's only really had one outstanding result. Let's click that one off his list of race wins to accumulate for his Palmares. And again, Remco Evenepoel within millimeters of the front of the bunch. Felix Großschartner close to the front as well for the UAE Team Emirates squad. Useful ally for Tadej Pogacar. He's looked pretty content. He too has maintained a vigil close to the front of the peloton throughout the day. Hasn't seen any reason to. I mean, we have seen in the past, of course, that Pogacar would be minded to go down towards the back and sort of cruise around looking for people to chat to, but this is classics racing, and this is classics racing in the rain. And that means you've got to be present. The vital statistics of the RF suggests it's a climb that gets tougher as it goes up.
It definitely does. Just over 2 kilometers in length. Start in about 3 kilometers now.
Chapeau and congratulations to these riders. Foss contracted through the end of 26. Leknesson similarly. Advantage 25. They don't know each other well, of course. They've been grown up together, all similar ages. The riders have produced some quality results. Stage win, of course, for Frederik de Versnes in the Tirreno Adriatico. A big day out that was, when it looked as if all the favourites were going to overhaul the Norwegian, who was in the early break. So that's probably worth recording. He's done it from the early break in a World Tour race this year. And he was the only one to survive, and he just kept keeping on, and it looked as if they were going to get him all day and all night, and it never quite happened, and he survived. And it was a hilly, choppy, hard day. And again, it wasn't particularly the weather conditions weren't particularly nice, but de Versnes had what it took to survive that one. And can lightning strike twice? And you wouldn't bet on it right now, not with the size of group behind. The distance to go. The collective strength available as Attila Valter makes his way towards the front for the Visma Lisa bike squad, the Hungarian national road race champions. A fine climber who's got up in this race as recently as 2 years ago.
You can see now, though, that the positioning is starting to get more and more crucial. Every team in formation, holding their position close to the front of the peloton. Pogacar has now got his rain jacket off.
Looks like, is that Van Sevenhout struggling a little bit for the potential puncture?
There's something not working.
On a surf, the young climber, with the young Belgian climber. Great 8th place finish in UA Tour at the beginning of the year. He's a rider to watch out for. I think they'd like to get him back in if they could. But he's clearly not absolutely certain he's got a puncture. Maybe there's some other issues, broken spoke or...
No, that you find out quite quickly. You realise it's more when you think you have a slow puncture or something like that. You're not quite sure, and especially with the tubeless these days, it seals the puncture back up again, and you have a bit less pressure. But it just
so you're not sure if the problem is solved or whether it's
exactly. And obviously you lose a certain amount of pressure, so all of a sudden the bike feels like it's not really doing what it used to, and with that. That question in your mind: have I got a puncture? Have I not? Has it sealed? Has it not? But he also looked like he's done his job. He was not looking at getting back in there.
Jacob Alula have, as you said, done a great job of staying out of the wind and out of sight and out of mind so far during this race. But they've moved up towards the front. I'm starting to see the presence of those purple bikes on the left-hand side of the picture. And I think I caught a sight of Michael Matthews, who was third in line of their riders onto the at F.
I guess this is the only climb left where you can still do that drifting, going up it, sort of lose a few wheels and try and save a little bit of energy. But time we get around to the next climb, that is no longer the case. But here you have to be really careful that you don't see splits opening up in the peloton, as I think they will start to squeeze on the power here now.
Now, time to get busy. 3 climbs from the end at this point, and the UAE Team Emirates and Soudal Quick-Step squads in command of the peloton, with the DSM Team Picnic Post NL squad, I should say, formerly DSM, starting to make their presence felt on the front on behalf of Oscar Onley and others. Remco Evenepoel and Tadej Pogacar absolutely latched to his back wheel. And Tadej Pogacar, just a moment for quick consultation with Kristen, I believe, and just trying to keep everyone motivated and communication absolutely key. And everybody understands exactly what's happening and why it's happening.
Well, it's time to go bike racing. Down to a short sleeve and race suit for Tadej Pogacar.
Kevin Jenniot's up there for the Groupama FDJ squad, team that I mentioned. He's the national champion, of course, of Luxembourg. He'll be doing a job for the likes of Romain Gregoire, surely their go-to man. But just maybe it could be for Guillaume Martin, who we mentioned is in absolutely stunning form after some great French Cup results last weekend. Victorious trip home to France. Valentin Madouas as well, part of their lineup that can produce today. And they're putting their riders as close to the front now as still the Soudal Quick-Step. Well, it's been quite the show of strength from the Soudal Quick-Step squad. They said they were going to do it, and they've done it. But, well, have they got the strength to survive through to the back end and retain riders to assist? Aaron Bourou still fighting in there. And towards the back of the group, the Spanish national road race champion is now the favoured son of Cofidis. Dylan Tuns struggling former winner of this race. But Aramburu knows the race. He was just outside the top 10 a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's unfortunately fallen into this way of sitting down the back that we see quite frequently from the Cofidis team.
I spotted Julian Alaphilippe down towards the back as well, the Tudor Pro Cycling man. Not going for a long-range attack today. Slightly different character of a race, different prospects and different approach from Tudor Pro Cycling and Julian Alaphilippe, who knows exactly what sort of explosive punch is required to win this race, having done it 3 times in the past already. Mauri van Sevenant available for Remco Evenepoel. What other friends has he got in there in that fast dwindling group? Breakaway group with what, over 700 meters now to the top of the climb. Surely going to be overhauled. Within 20 kilometers of the finish line. Diversness is a really solid climber, but must be feeling pretty weary at this point. And now we see Arc-en-Ciel stripes. They're all in battle dress, full regalia for the fight to come. Because everybody's as aerodynamic as possible and hopefully as warm as they need to be.
Yeah, I think at this point there is no longer any question of, keeping yourself warm and thinking about those sort of things. Is if you got aspirations here now, you got to strip down to your race gear quite soon and be prepared to suffer.
Those sails, those advertising sails at the side of the road, just giving us an indication of the wind direction. What's the intensity like? Well, not enough to split things. And of course, they're still climbing at the moment. The speed is slightly reduced. The EF Education Easy Post squad trying to move Ben Healy up a bit closer to the front. Has he got the punch, the outright searing pace? It tends to be a sprinter's finish, or at least a finish for sprinters who can climb. Or climbers who can sprint. Vincent van Hemelen down towards the back, as indeed is one of the pre-event favourites. Thibaut Nace finally dispensing with his rain jacket, somewhat reluctantly, I feel.
Yeah, it didn't look like he was particularly happy just now when he was back at the team car, but it's also the problem he's got is that he is on his own. Most of his teammates were either caught in or behind that crash and stopped to wait for Skelmoser. So Thibaut is completely on his own at this point.
Is that a tactical mistake by the team that they deployed so many riders to assist Skelmoser at that time?
I think a few of them were actually caught up in the crash. And then you had a couple of riders who already borderline dropped, let's say, that stopped and saw Skelmoser. So unfortunately, I think that the riders that were close enough to the front and had the legs, they were brought down in that same crash together with Skelmoser, and then there were riders that done their work that stopped as well, which left Thibaut on his own.
Well, they're not caught yet, and the way he signs on it, they're going to make it through to the penultimate climb of the day, because this is a super stellar job being done by the remaining riders of the breakaways. We're inside 18 kilometers now from the conclusion of Flèche 2025, and our 3 Norwegians out front are once again looking to extend their advantage over a peloton dwindling in number, but still controlled by the Soudal Quick-Step squad of the man in 3rd place, the Olympic road race champion, Victor, last Friday of Brabantse Pijl, and wonderful 3rd place finish for him in Amstel Gold, indicating that he's come back from that long injury layoff with huge motivation and wonderfully prepared for the Ardennes Challenge.
It's interesting that UAE Team Emirates haven't really turned on the pace just yet. they're riding hard, but it's not. Doesn't look flat out. Maybe I would feel different if I was sat in the peloton right now, but it just doesn't look like they're fully committed just yet.
Wonder what they have in terms of numbers. I mean, up towards the front at the moment is Jan Christen, and Brandon McNulty has made his way up. He's got great form, as we saw. It's still a huge bunch, so you can be sure there are plenty of other team members in there, but have they got the strength to really make a contribution here? And lots of riders feeling the effects of that climb, who'd worked very hard to present their team leaders and be on the front on the approach to the climb, then just drop back through it. As you said, it was one of those slippage climbs that you could still recover from. But for the domestiques, for the helpers, for those working to assist their team leaders, they've got to make another big investment now to try and represent them up front for the next climb to come.
Yeah, I mean, for UAE team members, I would expect them to have a large number of riders still left to do the work. We've been accustomed to seeing that, at least. But at the same time, we have to say, when the weather conditions are the way they are, some riders react well to it, some don't. And that, can mean that you all of a sudden end up with a couple of riders who otherwise normally would be there, are no longer, haven't got the legs to do the job that they were expected to do.
Gal Cleaver there towards the front for the Absinthe Coin squad. And the great work still being done by by Mary Van Sevenen on the front for the Sidal Quick Step team. Little anxious look over his shoulder. Yep, they're coming. I don't think there's much you can do about it this time. Mauro Schmidt down towards the back, trying to hang on in there. And we've got what, about 9k to the foot of the penultimate climb of the day. And that is, of course, the Sharav. It'll be 7, so just about 8k actually, just 8.1 kilometers now to the bottom of that final climb.
Largely downhill as well.
Well, they're not going to give it up without a fight on the downhill through to that climb, so it might be an opportunity for them to arrive at least into the penultimate climb. You have to believe. And we've got several riders there as well from the Groupama FDJ squad, so they are well represented up front. A couple of riders for EF Education Easy Post squad, just showing in pink towards the front on the right hand side. Ben Healy, as we've mentioned, does he have the particular characteristics for this one? Looked a bit like Harry Sweeney, who's on a good day, trying to support him. Maybe even with thoughts and dreams of his own hopes today. And tiptoed through that right-hander. Tobias Foss on the back has the luxury, you might say, of just taking it ever so slightly more cautiously, knowing he's got enough slipstream just to ease up into the wheel of the other riders. And every bend exit offering an opportunity for an anxious look over the shoulder. Flesh Wallone dominated for many years in the last decade, of course, by Alejandro Valverde. He won 4 in a row and took 5 victories in total in his career. 3 wins for the likes of Eddie Merckx, Moreno Argentin, Marcel Kintz, the late Davide Rebellin in the early years of this century. And, of course, for Julian Alaphilippe, who's among our number today. Claude Coquillon, of course, making the Mort de Huy his own back in 1985. First time that the race concluded on the Mort de Huy, and the local Belgian superstar Claude Coquillon got his name etched on one of the bends, of course, as a result of his successful race to glory. He was wearing world champion stripes when he did it, as indeed in the past of the likes of Marcel Kint, Ferdy Kubler, Rick van Steenbergen, Cadel Evans and Julian Alaphilippe most recently winning as the world champion in 2021. Is Tadej Pogacar going to be able to emulate that achievement and take his second success in Flèche Wallonne today? Well, the likes of Remco Evenepoel, Thierry Bonnet and others will have something to say about that. Reach into this climb, as you say, it's downhill all the way to it, and this penultimate climb of the day, the Côte de Charav, 1,300 meters in length. And we are what, about 4.5k, just over 4.5 kilometers to the bottom of this climb now. Surely, Magnus, we're going to see some sort of attack, or is everybody going to keep it for the Mur de Huy?
Well, it's like I said before. If you want to save your have anything left on the Mur de Huy, you cannot really be the one making the attacks on the Charav. You have to wait. I'm more expecting to see potentially a team effort of making this next climb super fast. To soften up some legs, to kind of, I guess, get rid of a certain number of riders that would then potentially have the legs on the Mur de Huy. So to make that a little bit easier. But I just don't see anyone really going for a solo move or anything like that on this climb.
Remco Evenepoel doesn't have a whole lot of teammates left, does he? So if
he's got one.
Yeah, and a very, very strong rider indeed, and Mauri van Sevenen doing a superb job today. Indeed, he is, as we see the Ineos Grenadiers squad coming up to the front. They've been on the front of the race, of course, all day, but coming up to the front for presumably Axel Laurence. They're still wearing jackets as deep into the race as they possibly can.
I was going to say, you see the difference there. You got Guillaume Martin going up there on the right-hand side for Groupama FDJ. It's still got his full raincoat on and everything else, and you see the two super favourites for the race, Remco Evenepoel and Tadej Pogacar, in short sleeve, down to race kit. They are here with a purpose, and I think sometimes as well, it's as much of a psychological thing when you strip off like that and you come down to your race gear and show the number, show you're there in short sleeves and everything. I'm here to do something, and sometimes it's like other riders then sitting there cold, freezing. They look over and they see these two in the shorts, down into their race kit. It's like, I'm not sure about if I could do that. Go like I'd be cold and whatever. You're busy thinking about something else other than winning the bike race.
Yeah, the nerves started to jangle a little bit as we see Romain Grégoire moving up on the outside to make sure he's in prime position. Doesn't want to miss anything that might be happening now. As a little bit of extra effort as well from Kevin Genietz trying to create something for the Groupama FDJ. We're inside 10 kilometers now to the conclusion of Flèche Wallonne 2025. Our three Norwegians still clear of the field. The penultimate climb beckoning. And what a brave effort it has been from these three riders from the early break who've been, they're absolutely soaked at this point. As indeed are all the riders still out there, but they're still full of fight, still full of intent, still full of purpose, still full of strength, and what a great, impressive display it indeed has been, as we're seeing others moving up on the outside. The Movistar squad have Davide Formolo among their number, and I did see him a little while ago. Could be Jorge Arcas, but Formolo was there just to try and assist Enric Mas. Movistar squad moving up on the inside as well with the Arkea B&B Hotels. Kevin Vauquelin wants to stay as close as he possibly can as the approach to this penultimate climb of the day. Ooh. It looked like there was a bit of movement in the peloton there as well as we cut away. I can only hope and expect that they did manage to stay upright, but it looked as if it's starting to get aggressive now for the first time today, or at least the first time in a very visible sense for us as observers. You can see that the riders not giving each other much room in there, and that things are, well, we're at the business end of this race. That's obvious now.
it is very obvious. Something going on down there.
Yeah, one rider dropping back. Is that wilting power, or is that just some sort of mechanical issue? I'm sure it wasn't something to do with Remco Evenepoel. No, it's one of the Israel Premier Tech riders who's been inconvenienced by this one, George Bennett. Well, St. George's Day not proving beneficial really for the New Zealander, as he finds his chain is all wrapped up there in a difficult way. It's obviously gone down between either the two chain rings or between the chain ring and the bottom bracket, and it's just not coming back.
A worst possible moment, as well, as we're just going up start in the Côte de Chirev as well.
Well, the breakaway will start the Côte de Chirev on the front, and Tobias Foss has a little look around and awaits the arrival of his team leader after a brave resistance, but the break has finally been retained inside the final 10 kilometres and onto the penultimate climb of the day. Well done and chapeau to Diversness Lekness und Andy to Tobias Foss, but it's the UAE Team Emirates squad. Großschartner now in command at the front, and short of teammates. I think Mari van Sevenen did drop back as well for the Soudal Quick-Step squad, so it's just one-on-one really with Tadej Pogačar and Remco Evenepoel, not with everyone else involved here, but just how many riders will still be involved, and the lack of teammates. How will this affect the way that this climb is played?
Yeah, well, I think UAE Team Emirates are going to continue to set a strong tempo here now. Expecting them to maybe go a little bit harder even, but it clearly looks like it's down the back of the what's left of the peloton. It's hard enough. Riders struggling to hold the pace, trying to save whatever energy they can, but still stay attached to this front part of the group.
Also got Tish Benoot looking in good shape. Ben Tollett as well is hanging on in there. Plenty not hanging on down towards the back. And Jaco Lula losing riders there. Plenty of other teams as well, finding that while it's just a bridge too far, two bridges in actual fact, two tough climbs to conclude the day. And now Jan Christen is starting to send a pace into the legs of others. And how many are going to be able to answer this particular question? Ben Healy's starting to move up. Looks as if Davide Formolo is nicely positioned there. Clearly on a pretty good day, the Italian veteran. So he's trying to hang on in position for as long as he possibly can. Remco Evenepoel's nicely placed there as well, and playing this one very nicely indeed. Brandon McNulty available for Tadej Pogačar with Christen on the front. And everyone looking pretty tired now. Little Trek jersey's not so much in evidence, and Thibaut Nace, is he going to be able to make his way up? Yeah.
He's there or thereabouts.
Has a bit of work to do just to make his way right up onto the tail of the leading lights. As Gregoire and friends from the Groupama FDJ squad start to become a little bit detached. Others starting to try and work their way up. Christian Scaroni, after his great start to the season, also within the first 20-odd riders. But this is a really, really tough and challenging pace. You've really, your best you can hope to do at the moment is maintain position. Very difficult to get ahead of another rider.
Yeah, it definitely will be. You're just going to have to stay where you are and just hope that any gaps that may appear in front of you gets closed back down again.
Now, Thibaut Nace, we just saw him in the line, but just having to
5 meters off the back there.
Yeah, fix a little bit of a problem there. This Ben Tollett that's also been distanced a little bit, the young British rider, looking around himself. Tish Benoot has managed to follow the pace, so good little problem-solving situation there for Thibaut Nace, and it's now a very select group. Will we see a regathering over the top of this climb? Will they regroup and allow more to come in, or is there enough impetus here and enough ambition from the UAE Team Emirates squad to keep this group as small as it is?
They will not sit up. I'm pretty certain of that. They will continue this down to the bottom of the Mur de Huy now. As
Ben O'Connor and Zana as well, also further back than they might have liked, being somewhat delayed and distanced. And there's some really strong riders who came in with high hopes are finding that the legs are just not responding as they would like. Plunging over the top now of the Sharav, and just the Moordahui awaits the riders, and it's a short run to the end. They've got 200 kilometers of bike racing complete to this point. The final 5K, where it's going to be decided, is Tadej Pogačar going to chance one? Well, onto the front. Is he off the front? And immediately scampering to the front, Remco Evenepoel. You're not going to get away with any easy little attacks there. Was that just that he wants to command the descent, or did he think about shaping for an attack there?
I think it's just that he wants to command the descent, but interesting, Remco Evenepoel did not even blink twice. He was straight on top of that and followed.
And as you say, they want to try and make the most of what they've made, because there is a little bit of a gap there, and a very motivated group trying to make their way back on behind. Tish Benoot just easing his way onto the wheel of Davide Formolo. Brandon McNulty, I think it is just in front. Ben Healy's managed to latch onto this one, and he's staying very, very close to the front, which is, well, position of maximum opportunity. Remco Evenepoel.
This is interesting, though, Declan, that you know, both Remco and Tadej are pushing, the ones pushing the pace on the descent here. I would have expected them to have maybe gone on the climb, as we got this difficult corner that we dealt with before.
Well, the leading group threw it, and the chase group fundamentally threw it as well. Just how much motivation is in there, and will Tadej Pogačar be minded to ask Brandon McNulty to ride through and really give a big dig here? Looks like they're going to come back.
Yeah, I think it will come back here, but it's wasting a lot of energy for some riders down the back here, but it's also burning energy for both Remco and Tadej at the front of the race here.
Magnus Sheffield is part of that chase group, and the mass ranks, such as it is, there's at least 3 riders from the Groupama FDJ squad trying to close this gap. It looks as if they're just cruising. They're anything but. Brandon McNulty, that beautiful, almost languid style, and that relatively low cadence, is grinding away on a big old gear and asking a huge question of the chasers behind. Well, they're going to make it on, but at what cost? There's riders sitting in the wheels here. Well, they're blowing smoke through their ears at the moment and wondering if they'll still have the legs to answer the big question when we arrive onto the climb. Guillaume Martin looks like he's up for this one. He's got the jacket off, second in line of the Groupama FDJs. He's going to have to continue to close the gap. So Gregoire presumably a little bit further back at the moment.
Yeah, a little bit of panic stations there from everyone in the group behind. They're getting gapped on the descent as we're now coming into the bottom of the Moederhui. A couple of 100 meters until we turn right.
That's the youngest rider in the bike race, Nordhagen, 20 years of age, still involved and still close to the front of it at the end, but he's surely not going to be involved in the distribution of the big prizes at the end of the day. That's between the likes of UAE Team Emirates, Arcadia B&B as well. Vogelan has moved up and put himself into prime position. Remco Evenepoel. And we're starting to see the first arrival of Tom Pidcock up to the front for the Q36.5, that Red Bull helmet. The world champion Tadej Pogačar wants to own it into the right-hander on the approach to the final climb of the day. Inside 2 kilometers to go, and the Moordahui beckons.
It definitely does. Right now, you want to be in that position just behind the UAE Team Emirates riders, where you got Remco Evenepoel sitting, you got Tom Pidcock sitting in there as well, and now Thibaut Nies has got himself up here. Has he got anything left? Has he been playing games with us?
Well, he's looked as if he's been struggling and on something of a rearguard action. Not physically struggling, you understand, but he's short of teammates. He's lost his strongest teammate and perhaps one of the pre-event favourites, Matthias Schkelmoser, but nonetheless, Thibaut Nies is thereabouts. And what's a stunning job, you have to say, being done by Nordhagen. Good day out for Norway, but how are they going to get the win today? Tish Benoot, his teammate, a little bit further ahead, already rocking as the gradient starts to grip for these riders, and Brandon McNulty sets a searing tempo that few can follow, certainly few can contemplate moving up. And here's Jan Christen coming back up to assist for Tadej Pogačar, and that's good news for him. Remco Evenepoel and Tom Pidcock and Kevin Vogelan and Ben Healy also in prime position. What about this from Magnus Sheffield after his puncture? He's still very much in prime position. Thibaut Nies there as well. as looking for an opportunity to just sort of gravitate up towards the front, shorn of one of his race numbers, and into the final grippy bit of this climb and onto the final 900 meters. Well, 1,300 meters in total for the length of the climb. What about this from Jan Christen, the Swiss rider, as he moves up and onto the front?
I'll tell you what, the pace that Christen is setting here is pretty special. So
Schmidt
really,
into position as well, doing a really good job.
Looking good.
Ben Healy looks as if he's got some legs for something a little bit more than this, and he's going to need more than this because Tadej Pogačar is waiting to explode, as indeed is Remco Evenepoel. Vogelaan is there or thereabouts as well, and also a good time for Lenny Martinez to make an appearance up in front for the Bahrain Victorious squad. Other teams trying to fight their way back into contention. Tish Minot further back than might be advised. It's Healy got to go for a late or an early one, and that's got to be the way that the Irish rider has to play it. EF Education easy post. No, he's their man, and Tadej Pogačar is equal to that one, and he's left, and he's gone. Tadej Pogačar hits the steep bit, and can anyone follow? Ben Healy is left floundering. Remco Evenepoel, Vogelaan and the rest have nothing to answer. That kind of pace and strength. Then, well, he's just floated up that climb as if it didn't exist. And Tadej Pogačar has a huge advantage now inside the final half kilometre. Still plenty of this climb remaining, and Ben Healy still in front of Vogelaan and the rest, but it's Tadej Pogačar that is going for glory here in Flesh Malone, and surely he's not coming back from there. Imperious form. They said he might be a little bit tired. They said maybe he should take a break after Amstel Gold. He said, I only pin a number on to go for glory and to go for victory today, and he's inside the final couple of 100 meters. The road still rises and is still super demanding. Vogelaan second in line. Remco Evenepoel, well, no, he bows his head, and clearly it's in defeat today. He's not going to get the win. He and his team took it to the rest today, but it is the UAE Team Emirates squad and Tadej Pogačar, the world champion, that is going to get the glory today unless something remarkable happens. Wonderful response too from Kevin Vogelaan. He's on fine form. Second last year. Second, surely the best that he can hope for today, because he's easing up, composing his victory celebration. He's done it again, 2 times in 3 years, and now Tadej Pogačar, another stunning podium success. This time it's victory in Flesh Malone 2025. Big response behind, and Vogelaan is just going to hang on for second. Pidcock coming with a late run to the podium. And Martinez, Healy and the rest exhaustively pile their way across the line. But what a strength that was from Tadej Pogačar. They'll be grinding their way up this climb. They were within seconds of him approaching the bottom of the climb. There'll be minutes to him by the time some of them get to the top of this hill. That's how demanding Mordui is in